Hey there, it's Buck here. Got another short video for you guys. If you haven't checked out the last one, go ahead and check it out. Kind of talked over some stuff there, and I had a question last week about how to render the fat down so you can make it into an oil for painting. And I don't know if you've ever fried a really greasy, fatty steak, beef, or any other kind. Can't use poultry, I found out, trial and error, but any red meat will work. And you know, when you're frying it on a pan, right, and it's got the blood congealing, and then you got the grease that's separating out, that's really clear. Well, when you're done frying or whatever, you can strain a screen or cloth or any way you can think of, strain just the clear stuff, and when it cools down, it'll dry, or it'll turn kind of a milky color, like I was showing you guys last week. Yeah, and this is my little bit I have left over. But yeah, I try to, if I have a really fatty steak or something, sometimes I'll try to render it, and you know, if I'm doing it myself and have the time and no one's watching, I'll go ahead and do it and set it off to the side in a can and can use it for painting later. I wanted to talk about also rendering hide glue. A lot of times when you're working with hide, rawhide, it's stiff when it starts out. Right here I'm cutting it round and around. Doesn't have to be a round shape, but just cutting around and making a long string in which to tie a drum up with, kind of like this, making the string. But rawhide's pretty solid when you start out, and when it's re-wet and soak it in some water, it turns soft again, and then that's when you can tie stuff up and do drums. And when you wrap up, say like a war club or like this tomahawk, when you wrap it up, it actually tightens when it dries. And I have all this stuff hanging up because it's smoking in the teepee, as it were. But yeah, if you can see, this is really pliable. This, you can hear it really stiff, but you end up with all these little scrap pieces a lot of times when you're working with rawhide, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. You have these little corners and ends and pieces, and I don't see one, but yeah, you can take all those ends and pieces and boil that down and render it into like a glue, a thick gluey type substance. You know, actually Frank at the college there gave me a bag full of that kind of glue that it was already ground up into almost powder form, you know, so you can just dump it in and make glue. Similar to like if you get gelatin, that glycerin, I think is what it's called, but gelatin, if you buy just raw gelatin and don't add the color, it'll also work on your bows and glues and stuff. I might have an example. Oh yeah, here we go. See that shiny on that bow? That's from being soaked in that glue. And actually I was talking about the oil paints and using these as examples for the rock paint, when actually this is that glue paint, and so is this, is that glue paint made out of all the rawhide ends and pieces, you know. And I found a sweet, I found out through one of my teachers a sweet hack that you can use if you don't have the time to render down your own skin scraps and all that kind of stuff, or go get gelatin and not make jello with it. I was taught that that's how they make, I don't know if you can see, this kind of glue. But most paste or glue is made out of stuff they don't use on you know, in the food industry and whatnot, or the leather they don't use. So really, I think the hide and the hoof and the stuff, the pieces they don't use, I think it sent to the glue factory, which is the old joke with the old horse, is you send them to the glue factory. I guess that's why I didn't figure it out, but I guess you can use that. And I have actually, this shield was done with that because it was much easier to get a bunch of it and use it up. And it's the same thing. Once you know your rawhide is in a paste form, you add your pigment, usually rock powder or some sort of plant substance. You can experiment actually with that and see what you come up with, powdered forms of different things, make different colors. But yeah, it works just the same, and I would actually say it's a little brighter, less brighter color, less shine to it, because it's actually painted with more pigment, so it has less shine. But you can see here, kind of the other stuff has kind of a sheen to it, probably because I have more glycerin and less powder, you know. But anyways, I wanted to cover that a little bit and talk about rawhide and its properties. Like I was saying, when it's wet, so imagine if you were painting on a rawhide, and if you want to experiment, there's different ways. You don't have to have a deer or anything. You could there's a trick I had heard that I know works. You can go and get one of those rawhide dog bones and soak that in a bucket overnight and then lay it out, and you can even cut it in the shape of something and dry it like that on something flat so it stays flat and doesn't want to curl back up, you know. Yeah, but it's neat painting on rawhide, because I think when we're painting on like canvas and that kind of what is this, canvas paper, I think it's kind of simulating a more natural thing, like painting on rawhide. That's why it has kind of a coarse feel to it, whereas rawhide isn't coarse and you can paint smoothly. But like canvas, it soaks into the hide, much like when you soak a hide in water, it goes from this, you know, hardened state to a softer state, and will tighten up when it dries. And the paint, whether you're using oil or acrylic or making your own glue paint, or you know, or whatever you're doing, natural paints, rawhide is a good I think thing to paint on, and natives been doing it for years. So if you're out of you know, your canvas and that kind of thing, you could look at stuff like using rawhide, and actually this is more valuable than canvas, so it kind of is an upgrade in a way, you know what I mean? And you can be traditional, geometric, or floral, or you can paint scenery. You could, you know, however your style of painting is what's really cool. But it gives it this western or native flavor, being that it's rawhide. So maybe inspire you guys to play a little bit with rawhide. the cutting the string, and that's how I got these stones tightened up in there. And that's pitch glue, that little black, I don't know if you can see, but all that string I soak it once it's cut. I'll soak it up and tie stuff up, and it'll just tighten right up. I think that's about it. I guess what I could do is grab the camera and let you guys get a closer look at some of this stuff. I'll just pan it over and you can look at my projects that I'm working on for myself. So, here we go. Here's a eagle's claw that I'm making. I'm gonna do a, I don't know if you can see, we need more light. Making an acoustic. This is actual bolas. They're 3 rocks connected to the one rock, and that's for getting small game. This is a little flint knife with a small black bear jaw. And there's the shield I was showing you guys with the wolf fur. If you can see the back, it's strung up with rawhide too. Here's a closer look of that war club tied up in there. It's a little feather in it. Here's the tomahawk. Notice that blade, I kind of got an edge on it, just grinding it on rock, making paint and stuff. But yeah, this is my little studio. There's my little pitch rocks and little knives. These are my little knives and stuff. And sorry it's so dark, I should have brought a light out. Here's some more knives, maybe I'll show those off later. Feathers, flute. There's that bow. It's got the snake skin on it. Bone tools and bone knives people don't really think about anymore, but they're reused a lot, but you'll never see them in archaeological digs because, well, that's my backpack. I'll show that to you sometime. Alrighty, that's about it, guys. We'll see you next week.